Yes, welcome back. You're still watching Power Breakfast right here on Citizen TV, and we are just about to kick off our news review this morning. And even before we started, of course, we were looking at one of the most interesting highlights, or rather headlines, this morning with my panelists, Boni Halwale, Senator Kakamega County, Karanja Kabagi, analyst and also an aspirant for the Nakuru Senate seat, and Kimani Wamatangi, Senator Kiambu County. Now, before we even look at this political headlines, there's a story on page 6 and 7 of the Standard. The entire spread is about the state of the economy. This has to do with the data released yesterday by the Kenya Bureau of Statistics with regard to the state of the economy. Now, that survey for 2017 says that overall growth achieved last year was 5.8%, which is a slight growth, slight adjustment from the previous year, which is 5.7%. Now, what the Standard has done is really nice because they've actually broken it down to the sectors that have actually gone down, beginning with agriculture, of course, given the drought, down to 4% from 5.5%. Of course, we're talking about 2016. Sectors like manufacturing down to 3.5% from 3.6%. Electricity also down. Construction down. Trade down. Transport has gone up slightly. Accommodation and tourism is perhaps that's a sector that perhaps has recorded the biggest growth, from a decline of 1.3% to a jump of 13.1%. That's really huge. And sectors that were not traditionally, the country did not traditionally depend on in terms of GDP, are now recording significant growth, and that is the reason why overall there's a slight growth in the economy. Sectors like real estate have gone up, communication has gone up, education, they say, has gone up, health as well. We do have an analyst here, a businessman who understands these things better. But the headline reads here, many Kenyans are poorer. Then how do we understand this? The economy has gone up, but many Kenyans are poorer. However slight the adjustment.
Well, I think first I want to seek msamaha from our listeners. My voice is a little bit...
We don't understand the campaigns, of course, now.
Welcome, the world of campaigns. I need to consult the doctor here. Anyhow, I think this is a very important topic. And I hope and I pray that in the future, Kenyans will be very focused on this issue. Because this is a bread and butter concern of the Kenyans. And this indicator should always be the main focus of the political class in our country. Because if you have a political challenge, the biggest political challenge any country has is the economy. And this reflects a shift even in terms of people thinking, especially the informed ones. What are we talking about? For example, if the agriculture is down, can Kenyan agree it is down? And I think they could, because we have experienced a drought. Since 2016, we have not had real good rain. And because a lot of our agricultural activities are rain-based, we haven't gone into mechanized, or rather agriculture based on irrigation. Then we are seeing this reflected very clearly. And I think it's very sad. Because agriculture for a long time will remain the backbone of our economy. But then, of course, when you look at the tourism, it has gone up. But let me tell you, one of the challenges that I find with our country, we've got excellent tourist asset. Excellent. But we still have got a number that is so pathetic. We shouldn't be talking about 7-8 million.
Instead of 1.3 million visitors.
It's nothing. This is nothing. And I think we really need to sit down and come up with a much more creative way of making sure that tourism contributes substantially, because the assets we have, there are very few countries that can boast of.
So it means even some of these sectors that have recorded this notable growth contribute very little.
Very little. Yes. Now, I want to touch on two more issues which are very concerned to me. Real estate. The real estate has grown from 7.2 to 8.8. Now, this reflects an interesting dynamic, because if you remember, for the last, since there was interest rate cut,
yes,
the banking industry has not been lending. But then you wonder, why is it possible that the real estate is growing? There are 2 or 3 factors. One, we have a lot of diaspora fund that is being pumped into the real estate development. The second thing is that there is a third economy, an economy that is not captured.
That is not even accounted for.
It's never captured and is not accounted for. And this also leads to what we talked about some times back, about KRA. Now, how does KRA capture all this data in terms of trying to maximize in the revenue generation of our country? And I think real estate, anywhere in the world, if you see real growth in real estate, it's a very important indicator of the macroeconomy, the growth, because there is confidence in public investing in real estate. Because real estate, first of all, it's long term and it's a brick and mortar.
Yes.
So for someone to put money there, he must be having some confidence,
yes,
as far as the country is concerned. Now the other issue which I want to comment on is the communication. The communication sector is also very interesting, because you see, we are talking about 39.4 million Kenyans that are right now using internet. And that's brilliant, because it means we are a technology country, or we are heading towards being a technology country. But this is very, very important, because if you look at the ambitious goal of the Jubilee government, one of the things they talked about is having kids get laptops. Now, I would hope the whole country will galvanize itself in terms of wanting to really exploit this particular sector, because a nation that is informed population-wise is a nation that is able to make decisions that are more thought through,
yes,
than what we have been having.
Now,
so that is a concern.
Yes. Senator Halwale, in other jurisdictions, especially in the United States, when it's an election year and such data comes out, this probably should make most of the fodder for campaigns, whether to criticize the government or to sell your agenda. Now, looking at this, and probably this will escape most of the electorate's minds or discussions, how do you view this? Because this is data from 2016. It is an election year, less than 4 months to the election. Drop in agriculture, drop in mining, drop in manufacturing, drop in electricity supply, construction drop, trade drop, transport and accommodation for tourism. Those are some of the only sectors that are going up.
Let me start by commenting about how this can affect the conversation during the political campaigns. It's unfortunate that the political campaigns are not going to be driven by issues. They are going to be driven by which tribe is supposed to be removed from State House and which tribe should be taken to State House, and all manner of ethnic mobilization issues. To speak to the report on the economic growth, there are 2 things. The first one is, whatever the figure, you can put it at 99% growth, but how does it trickle down to?
Because the headline just says many Kenyans are now poor.
Exactly. How does it trickle down to Mwananchi? Kenyans are today poorer than they were 5 years ago. That is what we should be speaking to. So it therefore means that this marginal growth in the economy, don't forget Uhuru Ruto told us they were going to get double-digit growth of the economy. They have failed miserably. However, this marginal growth is enjoyed by a very small percentage of Kenyans, and the majority of the Kenyans do not benefit from it. And who are these Kenyans? The political elite. And what are the political elite doing? They are simply looting the economy. The second issue is, what are the top drivers of the Kenyan economy? On a hand of 5, number 1 is agriculture, number 2, manufacturing, number 3, financial services, number 4, the transport industry and real estate. Now, of all those 5, which are the critical financial drivers of our economy, all of them have dropped.
Apart from real estate?
Yes, apart from real estate.
Tourism.
I'll come to tourism. Tourism is not one of the top drivers at the moment. Tourism has collapsed in the country. They have all dropped. So we are doing extremely badly. Now, let's go to the 13.1% of the growth in the tourist industry. It translates into just an academic record, because when you go on the ground, you go to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, you go to Moi International Airport, the real indicator is the arrival of tourists. They are not there. I have worked in my private practice as a doctor in Mombasa for 6 years, and I can confirm that there are no tourist activities taking place in Mombasa. All the 5-star hotels are empty. The only people you find there are government officials holding seminars and workshops and what have you. Otherwise, people coming from outside to bring in dollars, the whites are not there. You go to Dar es Salaam, you go to Zanzibar. I was there a few days ago, and the contrast is amazing. The place is sizzling with foreign entrance. So to me, this is a sad thing. Kenyans, we will try and explain this to you in the midst of this tribalism and ethnic mobilization. Let us vote to issues. Our economy is dead.
Yes. Senator Wamatangi, surely this is an indictment on the Jubilee administration. In an election year, given that the promise was double-digit growth, now we're seeing a drop in, just as Senator Halwale has pointed out, a drop in most of the major sectors that are supposed to be driving the economy.
Well, depending on which lens you look at it, you can draw that conclusion or draw a different conclusion. And first, I want to state one matter of fact, that for you to arrive at a percentage growth of the economy, then you have to calibrate several factors, all those key drivers, all the indicators, to come up with an average that tells you, out of the 13% by which tourism grew, out of 5.7% which this other sector dropped by, what is the median, what is the average growth? And you know why it is averaged? It is because each of those indicators affect the others. And there is none, when you are looking at the economy as a whole, whether it has grown or not grown, that you can deal with in isolation to say that specifically because of this. And I'll give you an example of what I'm saying. Look at, for example, the growth in tourism, and what has it done? Because according to this report, indeed, this growth is largely contributed to by the growth in tourism, and especially conference tourism. But ask yourself, when conference tourism has grown, what ripple effect does it have on all the other sectors of the economy? I mean, when people arrive, they have a conference in Nairobi. What does it say to the person employed as a driver in a hotel or a waiter in a hotel? How does it affect the wife of or the child of that particular person at home? And the point I want to make is very simple here. If you look at, if you ask yourself, what is the stimuli, and that's what I would want to focus my mind on. What is the stimuli that has caused that growth, for example, in tourism? That tells you, for example, that when government says that we have invested more in security, for example, and that has caused the mind shift or the mental shift in global perception, which then helps the tourism sector to grow and then affects the economy. That tells you that it is the right stimuli that's been applied. And then lastly, look at the average for the last 4 years of the Jubilee government, because you said it would be an indictment.
It is an election,
yes, you would say an indictment, but don't forget that the same report itself, especially when speaking to the agricultural sector, actually clearly points out that the factor that had to be defined by that drop was a natural calamity, which is drought. And you see,
any serious politician should know is actually a reality that it does happen.
Yes, and you see, there is no way you can you can hold a stick to cane a government because there was drought. But the point I wanted to make finally is this, that in the overall, if you look at what would you say about the average between when the Jubilee government, for example, came to power in 2013 and now in 2017, you know, what has been the swing between the 6.8 and the 5.8 now? Does it say that there has been a general, and I want to say a general direction that indicates that there has been effective, well thought out, dedicated application of effort in stimuli to continue the growth of the economy?
The question is because it's an election hearing period, and of course politicians will bandy around numbers and say we will do this and the other. Is it practical to even promise double-digit growth for anyone?
Well, at first, it is the ambition every leader will have. It's a wish list, but you have always to contend with the imperatives of the possibles and the impossibles. Now, to grow at 10% in the economy, and you have seen China was an exceptional case for 10, 20, for almost 30 years, from 1989. A lot of things need to be in place. First of all, I want to say this. You need to invest in certain assets, like, for example, power. Now, this country, and I want to say this to every politician from every political divide, one of the key inputs in any development is the power generation. And I'll give you statistics which will tell you what I mean. If you look at the total installed capacity in this country is about 2,350 megawatt. Total installed capacity. The maximum demand is 1,650. Do you know that is like operating a factory in some countries? One country. And you have a country of 45 million people. And they are consuming power at the rate of 1,650 megawatt. The two are contrast. Take South Korea with about population of 50 million people. You know what is their total installed capacity? About 90,000 megawatt. 90,000 what? Megawatt. And they are producing an economy of $1.337 trillion, which is almost 59% of the total production of Africa. Now, if Kenyans are going to understand about how do you grow an economy, first, what are the inputs to that economy?
And electricity.
And let me tell you, it doesn't matter what political class would address this issue. They don't seem to get it. Until you are able to produce enough power to be able and to have sectors that are going to consume that power, because you just don't produce it. It must be. So we need to ask ourselves, for example,
we don't even have an industry.
Let me tell you, for example, steel industry. If we can be able to have a steel industry in this country, first, you reduce the cost of construction substantially, because steel is a very major input. We have not yet, as a nation, come up to an agreement that it's time we developed a steel industry.
We're still importing.
Yeah, we are still doing massive importation. Now, the day we agree that we need to have that kind of a major industry, it's going to make a lot of difference. The other thing, as far as agriculture is concerned, I want this ambition of the Tana River, 1 million square kilometers or square acres of agriculture that will be irrigation based, be developed. It has nothing to do with which political divide you are in. Now, and I want to say this. Many times I look at the narrative of our discourse and discussions, and I want to say that we are still very far in unlocking our minds, in understanding. Listen,
I want to agree with you.
What are actually the political imperatives that will drive this country.
Because it still boils down to the politics again.
I want to agree with Kabake, and I'm very happy that for the first time, Kabake has chosen to stick on the reality. But having done so, you are then a defeatist in saying it's not doable. It is doable. Let me remind you, when President Kibaki took over, the economy was growing at minus 1.8. And by the time he was exiting, he had pushed it to 7.2%. So,
within 10 years.
Yes, it is doable. Now, as I said at the beginning, transport, for example, is one of the top 5 drivers of the economy. And where do you find it? You find it on only one artery. The artery that starts from Mombasa, then comes to Nairobi, and eventually Malawa and Kampala. But President Kibaki and Raila decided to open a second artery. It means the economy was, the contribution of transport was going to multiply by 50%. Yes, we're going to grow by 50%. What did they do? They come up with the Lamu Port, South Sudan, and Ethiopia project. The LAPSET project was now going to open a second artery from Lamu to Isiolo, all the way to South Sudan and Ethiopia. If Uhuru and Ruto had focused on that, and that artery was now open, our economy would be growing at double digits. So it is actually doable, and the answer is bad politics, and therefore poor governance.
Is it possible to change our discourse and make this stuff like this the main point of discussion in an election year, as we should?
You know, let me first say, Fred, that you see, we have to say to our people and to our viewers this morning, to Kenyans in general, because this is an important issue to Kenyans, and like you said, it can be a matter that can be used to be very judgmental, even on a government. But let's,
because we elect a government ostensibly.
Yeah, sure. So let's first be clear so that our viewers can understand that to pass a judgment on the effect and the direction and effectiveness of a government on the economy cannot be a one single survey based decision. It can't. I'll tell you why. Making a judgment purely on an economy, what has been happening has got to be, as you have seen in this report itself, averaging all those sectors, also average a reasonable duration. And that's why I brought up this issue, that how you would pass judgment and ask what has been the direction of the economy since this particular administration took over. You would have to look at the swing between different surveys from within that period of 4 years.
Then if we just did a comparative analysis between the previous regime and this one, in terms of growth.
Absolutely.
And Senator Lole pointed it out. And then it means that
that's what I was coming to, Fred. That's what I was coming to. Remember, when you're looking, and that's why I said you cannot just use either a single narrative or a single period. Remember, like when you're looking at this period, when for example, this particular government has been in place, you're talking about a time when the economy globally was in recession, and whatever was happening in the global scene equally also affecting this country, not only our country but generally even the continent. And so when you're passing judgment, one thing you want to be asking yourself is, what other influences, what other effects have also affected the local economy? And so I think in general what we would be saying is that we cannot spell doom to our people,
but we can ask
in their minds to say that we're headed downwards. The good thing, listen, my friend, now listen, and then read the report. The report is very, very clear. It says, actually look at the heading, it says the economy defies key indicators, you know. And look at also some of the sectors that have been poor. Look at some of the factors that have been looked at that have also enjoyed some growth. You know, it talks about, for example, information, communication technology, transportation, and
storage. You know, those small areas.
The key drivers of the economy. But we need to wrap up this conversation and move on to other headlines.
Let me just agree with Mheshimiwa Matangi here. You see, as we talk about the economy, we cannot be a solutionist. Now, I'll cite a number of countries. Let's look at Nigeria. Nigeria is going through a terrible, terrible economic meltdown. South Africa is going through a terrible economic meltdown. And these are the two major economies in Africa. Nigeria, having been debased, is number one. South Africa is the other one. The challenges that are in those countries, they are huge and enormous. So, when you talk about economies of any country, like for example, China's economy will be affected by what is happening in America. India's economy is going to be affected by what is happening in other parts of the world. Now, but what I want to say here, for us as a country, we need to be able to coalesce together and look at what are the key economic assets that we must have. And I want to say this. If you look at LAPSET, for example, which has been cited by Mheshimiwa Kalwale, it's a huge, it's a 1.8 trillion or 2 trillion shillings project. If we can unlock that potential, let me tell you, the impact will be enormous. If you look at the Konza City, Technology City project, if we can do it, it will have enormous impact. If we can do it. And I think we can do it. I have no doubt. First of all, I'm not a pessimist. I am a realist. To take my word. But I also look at what is happening globally. Now let me cite something that is really important, and it is going to change the landscape of this country. We need to electrify our railway system. You know what is going to consume? That will consume the total power we are producing in this country. The total power we are producing in this country is going to be consumed
if we had an electric train.
If today we electrified our railway system from Mombasa all the way, and that is where we can say we can be able to actually change the landscape of this country. Because the moment you have huge assets like that one of railway system, which I support, and then let me tell you, no country is going to go anywhere today, particularly if it is as massive, large mass like we have in this country, without having an effective railway system. So on that score, I support the standard gauge railway.
I think I want to comment something. What he has said something
as you wrap up on
extremely important. When the Kibaki and Raila administration envisaged the standard gauge rail line, Uhuru did very well when he pushed it. But he forgot that it was not just a question of completing the rail and bringing their wagons. There were other ingredients. And the most critical ingredient was electricity. Now, had he accompanied that project with that, fairly difficult, then the current stone-age wagons that have come from China would not have been the ones arriving. We would be having a tube. And I can assure you, if upon completion of SGR, President Uhuru had brought there a tube train, we would not have managed to remove them. Just a minute. They completely lost focus because it was not their project. And unfortunately, it is because of corruption.
On a very quick one, there's a very quick one. On what you had asked, because of the point that you made that is very important. How would you look at this without divorcing it from politics, or how does politics affect it? And I was reminding myself, remember what happened when government took on a massive venture to increase energy production in this country. And remember, there was the coal project. I'm a member of the Energy Committee in the Senate. There's a coal project that was in Lamu. There is one that is also in Moore Hills. And I will tell you, I visited the coast. And just on the fact that there was the coal plant which was about to be inaugurated, then politics took over at that particular time. We had to go there like about 5 or 6 times to convince the people. Some people were arguing this is bad for the country, this is bad for the local people. What do the local people get out of this? How much percent? I mean, a lot of politics, even up to today.
the co-firing plant in Lamu never took off. The exploration of the oil and extraction of the coal in Moa Hills never took off, even now in Ukambani. And so politics also plays a very big part of this. And so, you know, political reform and thinking of the people,
whether to drive economic growth,
yes,
all the discussions
all the discussion also has a major effect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and probably this is one of the very good reads in today's dailies. State of the economy on page 6 and 7 of the Standard have done a very nice spread, breaking it down. The sectors that have registered growth, those that have registered poor growth, tourism being one of the winners. Many Kenyans are poorer. That's according to the biggest headline on that page, despite that marginal growth of 5.8% in 2016. Let's now take a break. When we return, we now discuss politics, which eventually will affect the state of the economy.